Hey guys, Buckeye Bar guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Today's day is Thursday, January 13th, 2022. And we got probably a pretty quick one tonight. Is just one topic really on the thing, but it's a lot of moving parts today with the coaching staff. So we just kind of wanted to give our reactions to all the coaches that were hired, the coaches that were let go or decided to leave. So we will start off with actually we're going to start off. This is a couple days old, but what's his first name? Is it Greg Frye?
Justin Frye.
Justin Frye. Greg Frye's who? That's a ex-quarterback.
I don't remember Greg Frye. I know the name, but isn't that the guy? He was a quarterback in the 80s, wasn't he?
Yeah. Justin Frye. So he's the new offensive line coach. So I believe our last episode, Stud was already gone by that point. So we talked about that, and we talked about that Justin Frye was going to most likely be the next offensive line coach. That at least that's what all the major reports says. So that's official. He is the offensive line coach. A lot of seems like a lot of good positive news. You know, obviously he worked with Day, younger guy, energetic, has always had pretty good offensive lines. I'm assuming he's going to be the run game coordinator. I believe that was in the release. So, I mean, pretty good news all around. I definitely think we needed a new kind of new direction there. Stud, it was obviously, Stud's had some really good offensive lines over his years. I think a lot of people want to poo-poo that he hasn't. I think a lot of people have some recency bias that how, different times the line looked this year. But for the most part, Stud's always had some pretty good offensive lines. So, I thought he always did good as an offensive line coach. He took a couple different directions in recruiting that maybe I would have took if I was in the same position, but obviously I'm not in that position. He was, it's just, I think that, but as his back injuries were getting worse and worse, I think it just was becoming harder and harder for him to kind of move around and do the duties of coaching, basically a 365-year job that, coaching in college entails with recruiting and everything. So, I'm glad with the new directions. Just your thoughts on Justin Frye as the new offensive line coach.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So, my thoughts on it, he's younger, of course, so he doesn't have the experience that Stud has. I think a lot of the recruiting with Stud, it was always taken under a microscope every single time he missed on somebody. I'm not sure that was actually fair with him, but he missed a lot this past year. And I think it was, I don't want to say laziness. I think it was because, he wasn't feeling healthy. But, Frye, he hasn't been as successful as a recruiter as what Stud is, but he's really young. We're talking about a guy that's like 38 right now. So he's just coming into his own. We all know that, younger guys that they relate to the college players much better than some of these older guys do. Of course, he doesn't have as much experience as Stud, but he's been successful everywhere he's gone. He was a GA at Florida under Urban Meyer. So, Urban, the one thing Urban knows is run schemes. We know that, very well that Urban's well versed in how to run the ball. He went to, Temple and Boston College. I believe he was with Day at both of those stops. And he learned under, Steve Adazio, who's a great offensive line coach also because he was a head coach at those places. So, I think the guy's pedigree speaks for itself, who he's learned under. He went over to UCLA, worked with Chip Kelly. His offensive lines, running games have gotten better every year that he's been at his school. kind of like Jim Knowles, whose defenses have gotten better every year he's been in a school. This guy, he's shown improvement. It's not something that, becomes stale, static, that, it's like doesn't become outdated, that you can't work with it anymore. So I think it's great. I think, the block O on on his shirt's going to help with the recruiting. I'm sure he's a personable young guy that can relate with kids. And so I think personality mixed with who he's recruiting for is going to, help him win some of those recruiting battles. I just think maybe at this point of his career, he hasn't been in the right place that he's going to land, multitude of 4 stars or 5 stars players. But now that he's at Ohio State, I think we're really going to start seeing his recruiting chops.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think we kind of talked about this in the last episode or the episode prior, that just, I think that, you kind of need with offensive line, you work home first and then regionally, and then, go try to win the battles. You think you can win the battles nationally, and that could be out west. It could be down south, and, just find the guys that are high on you, nationally, after you go get the base of your offensive line class filled with, guys in this general region, and then, go look out to see what you can find. And I think the Ohio State, as you said, the block O will definitely help. I think as long as he's got the energy, he's personal, families like him, Ohio State does a lot of the heavy lifting to begin with. The reputation is there. The reputation's been there for a long time, specifically the last 2 decades, and it's definitely the last decade. I mean, that's, he's not going to get laughed out of anywhere. I mean, if somebody says that, Ohio State's on the phone, or, Greg
Right.
or Justin Frye from Ohio State, goes visits a high school and stuff, he's not getting laughed out of anywhere. So, he can go in there and, so it's just now getting his fine too. I think sometimes it's important to have good position coaches that can go out and do these battles, but a lot of times with them, they got to make the first impressions and get in the doors, and then hold on to the guys, and then your head coach and your coordinators kind of make they're the ones that they're the ones that finish everything, and so as long as he can get in there and get some loving going, and get these guys excited, people that possibly want to play for Ohio State, I think he'll do fine as long as he's got the energy. So I mean, This is my opinion on it.
And he has West Coast ties, but he is an Indiana alum, so he's from over here. So I mean, that helps him, like what you're talking about, like being in the area. Make sure you're locking down Ohio first. I mean, not that you would have struggles locking down Ohio, because you're the Ohio State offensive line coach. Kids want to play. It's the State University of Ohio. That's like, you should be able to get those kids. I mean, if like losing people, to Kentucky and you're Ohio State and they're in-state kids is just asinine. So
Yeah.
That's something that you should always win those battles. So I don't think he'll have any issues with that, but it's good that he knows this region.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely agree. So I'm excited about that move, and looking forward to seeing what he can do. Obviously the big news has started coming down today. So, the defense
Thursday.
Yeah, the defense, Jim Knowles, when he was hired, we knew that there was going to be some changes probably. We just never knew how deep the changes were going to go. Eventually Barnes ended up leaving, but that's just a 1-for-1 replacement, Knowles to Barnes. And, were they going to keep Kerry? Were they not going to keep Kerry? Were they going to keep Al Washington? Were they not going to keep Al Washington? We all knew they were going to keep Larry, but what's Larry's mindset is, when's his horizon getting ready to set? I think we're definitely have him for this year. I think he would have probably, that decision would have been made by now if he was going to retire. I think he would have went out with this group, but so it seems like we're pretty solid that he's staying another year, but that was up in the air possibility whether he was going to make that decision. And the other possibility is what was going to happen with Parker if he was staying. Was he being demoted and all that stuff? So seems like he's definitely staying. It seems like when you read between the lines and some of the things I said, that Day really likes him and stuff like that. So I mean, I've made my comments, my opinions on that one. So I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean,
Yeah.
I have nothing against Parker. It's nothing that he was doing wrong that I thought. I just felt that they needed another defensive coach for Knowles to hire. I've kind of backed off of that maybe a little bit now after today, just because, so Kerry left, Al Washington left. They end up hiring, or they're in the process of hiring, two secondary coaches. Perry Eliano from Cincinnati, which was the cornerbacks coach down there. It looks like he'll be coaching safeties, and then Tim Walton, who was has been in the NFL for the last like 14 years, but prior to that was in college. It was actually the defensive backs coach for Nick Saban at LSU when they won the title in 03. So he had some stops in there, a couple stops at Miami. And then he went to the NFL. I mean, great, things are coming out of the NFL about him as a defensive backs coach. And he's a Buckeye alumni. He was here in the early 90s, pretty much was a starter in all 4 years that he was here. And he was a captain in his final year. So, I mean, he's going to have that Buckeye pride with him. So I'm excited. I mean, kind of sucks to me, kind of losing, it sucks losing Kerry. I mean, I've always been a big Kerry Coombs fan. Obviously this year was a weird year because he got demoted, whatever, from play calling duties after the second game. I maybe wish maybe that situation would have went maybe a little smoother than it ended up going, but he was a trooper, stuck it out. He's always been open, honest with the media, his great sound bites, always loved his energy. He's been a really good coach on the staff now from his second stint. And so I'm going to miss him. But at the same time, I think it was probably the right moves to, bring in some new faces, because biases sometimes happen, and you can't get away from that. And I think if Knowles was trying to change a bunch of stuff, and you get some coaches on the staff that kind of revert back to old tendencies because, well, this is what worked in the past. Well, did it really work? And we're changing it. And so I think Knowles needed some new slates. Obviously, that new slate wasn't going to be Larry Johnson unless he chose to go. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I mean, you got guys like you said, they'll revert back to maybe bad practices or old practices. What worked before, we're going to do it again, and that's not how it needs to be. Knowles has to be in control of that. He needs that defense to run exactly how he wants to. You don't want them to kind of gang up on you and say, "We're not going to call this position or that technique this. We're going to call it this because that's what we've always called it." So you kind of needed that fresh slate. And I also put it on Twitter earlier. I mean, honestly, if you're Al Washington and you're Kerry Coombs, I think both of them, I read that they had, it was their choice if they wanted to come back or not. So I don't think Knowles drove them out or anything like that. But I don't know. Like for me, how could I come back and be on that team if I'm essentially getting a demotion? And Kerry, what's he going to do? Like if these guys aren't tip top, is like Knowles going to talk about the old staff or like the old way they did things in a tone that would make Kerry upset? Al, he would still be on staff, but might be working. I mean, Jim Knowles, from everything we've heard, he's taking over the linebackers, which is great. I want him to, but if you're Al, how can you how can you watch someone else coach your guys and not take something the wrong way if he's pretty much telling them that everything you've been taught is wrong and you got to relearn the position. So I don't think there was a way. I mean, I understand why it took them each, a while to think about this, and maybe why Ryan Day, at the end of the day, him and Jim Knowles had to make the decision for them. Um, it's better though, honestly. I mean, it's better start off, go clean slate here. Just break the ties with those guys. You got, as far as what we know, I mean, we heard that, yeah, Eliano from Cincinnati. We heard he's a, very aggressive recruiter. He's a great coach. I know he wasn't there the whole time with like Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant, but hell, I mean, the one won the Thorpe Award and the other one never gave up a touchdown his entire college career. So obviously he had success with those guys. Tim Walton, what was strange about that is I did read a lot of kind of like criticisms that he didn't move people. I don't think people understand that you don't hang around in the NFL for a long, long time if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And like, I don't, you know, usually secondary coaches, when the head coach gets fired, they don't hang around with the staff. So yeah, I mean, there's movement. If you're, if your head coach doesn't stay where you are, you're going to go to a new team, and that's just how it goes. That's not necessarily, a criticism or indictment on him. That's just his head coach got replaced, so he had to go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the guy probably will be able to recruit. He'll be passionate because he is an Ohio State alum. He was, I read he was either a full-time starter or part-time starter in every single season that he played for Ohio State. So that's awesome. And, I think he'll be fine. He's done it at the college level. It's been a long time, but he's been at the pro level. Sounds like the pros love him, that he's relatable. He wants to make sure they're doing okay. A lot of the same stuff that we heard about Jeff Hafley, when he came over in 2019. So
Yeah. I
I'm very
liked what
excited
I
about
mean.
these.
Jalen Ramsey is one of the best corners in the NFL, and what he made, the comments he made about just how he's one of the best defensive backs coach he's ever played for, and I mean that says a lot to me because I mean Jalen Ramsey's a great corner, and Doug Marone had some really good comments about
Yeah.
him too. So it's I'm fine with that. Kind of my take on this. First of all, it does in the end of the day make sense to hire two secondary coaches. I was listening to a little bit of the Letterman Row guys today talk about this, and it was either Berm or Austin. One of them brought it up that it makes sense when you're going to be having five secondary guys on the field, and three of them are going to be safeties. So it makes sense to have a safeties coach, and it makes sense to have a cornerbacks coach. And when you think about it that way, I agree with it. And it definitely seems like this is going to be a very complex defense that they're attempting to run, and it's all three levels. It's it's the line, it's the pressures coming from the linebackers, and it's the secondary. And from everything what I'm seeing from Knowles' defenses, from what I watched, I mean, he runs that, he either runs a 4-man front or he runs that 3-man front with, the standing, defensive line, the Leo. But it seems like he pretty much brings five guys almost every time. And so that means somebody's blitzing, or, a couple people are blitzing and a couple people are dropping from the line. I mean, a lot of the things I've watched that, pretty much his base defenses are almost five guys are coming almost every time. So, which is a kind of a different thing. So I think you need a lot of different minds in there, and you need to kind of let them gel. And I think with these two guys, they'll be able to gel together. And I think kind of the reasons why they chose the guys they did, Cincinnati, you got your young, aggressive recruiter there, but at the same time, Cincinnati didn't lose to Alabama because of their secondary, and their secondary was tough as nails this year. You got a Thorpe winner, you got an All-American on the other side that doesn't give up a touchdown. Plus, they're great at tackling. And the two things our safeties could really use is better in coverage and better in tackling. And I mean, how many missed tackles have we seen over the last several years? I mean, outside of really 19, which is kind of it's the odd man out. I mean, we've had a bad tackling defense since 17 for the most part. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's been, I mean, pretty much since Luke left that the tackling has really dropped off on this defense. And so I think that getting a mindset, especially in the secondary, it seems like guys get loose too easily and then they're not easily brought down. And it's one thing if guys make catches, but if somebody's there at least to make a tackle, or two guys are there to make a tackle, force teams to work for everything they're doing. So I like that hire. With the Walton hire, kind of my thought process is a lot of this, pattern matching defenses that, he runs. Well, I think he thinks, I kind of maybe need an NFL guy that's been around the NFL for a while, and they checked off a couple boxes. You get a ex-Ohio State alum, you get a, guy that has college experience, so he knows what recruiting's like. Granted, it's been a while since he's had to do it, but he also knows probably complex NFL coverage packages. And I think a lot of what, Knowles wants to run is kind of that. And, so it probably is not a bad thing to have a guy that could really kind of break some of these concepts down for our secondary, because it's going to be what's kind of expected from him.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, I think that's going to be very important if you get a level of complexity, into this defense. You need to have someone that's kind of seen it all, which Tim Walton has, that he can help teach these guys. Hopefully, and I wouldn't assume you'd get Bill Davis 2.0, but you hope that doesn't happen where it's a guy that just assumes that his guys already know all the complexities to a defense and he doesn't have to go over any sort of like fundamentals or anything like that. So, and I don't think you'll get that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's worst case scenario, but I'm saying, I'm just hopefully you wouldn't get that again. Um, I think these are great hires though. I really
Yeah,
do.
I like both of
In
them. I really
like
do.
Cincinnati, I mean, they had a third good. They were kind of actually set up like the 2019 Buckeyes. I can't think of the kid's name right now, but they had a good slot cornerback also. So you know that's awesome. Bring that stuff back. I would love to see this team playing like they did in 2019 again.
Yeah. And
But impression.
I think the big thing with Walton, that hire, like I said, he's seen a lot of different coverages now over his career. And from everything I'm reading from Knowles, is literally the dude will run. I mean, he's primarily cover 4, cover 3, but he will literally run cover 0, cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, and even cover 5, which is a very rare defense to run. And yeah, like I read today how even he throws the cover 5 out there, which is basically it's Tampa 2 safeties and the 5 underneath guys are all playing man to man. So I mean that's pretty so I think there's going to be a lot of different things they're going to show. I mean, there's even times where he brings in a 6 defensive back and he runs dimes and stuff like that. So I don't think I think having a kind of an experience, maybe NFL minded coach is not a bad thing having it there. And because, I think there's going to be a lot of different concepts thrown at these guys, and having somebody that could kind of teach them how to do it is probably very beneficial.
Yeah, and sometimes I think too much about where people are from as far as like regionally recruiting, but it doesn't hurt that one of these guys is from Texas, the other one's from Georgia. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's maybe not as big of a deal as what I make it sometimes, but it's still something.
Yeah. And
But you
and
can't lose
then
it. You can't lose a step on recruiting because that is something Kerry Combs could do very well. And Kerry was an excellent cornerback coach too. So I mean, I know you said you're a little bit on him. So of course I just want to show my gratitude for him as a coach. For my favorite team for all those years, got in all those great recruits that became first rounders. And the guy was awesome. He was just pure energy on the field, and he brought in the the greatest era of cornerbacks maybe at Ohio State. He had a huge part of that. So
yeah.
you
And
can't
I mean
can't thank the guy enough. He was over his head as a defensive coordinator.
the one thing you could say is, kind of where some of the issues on this defense got started is because he left.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
lost. They didn't get. I mean, they had to eat basically 2 straight years where they pretty much got almost no corners, and
Yeah.
you know, and that killed them. And now they have some younger guys, but I hope Cam Brown ends up being, what I think he is. Seven Banks, I think's pretty good. It was pretty good. It seems like Denzel Burke's going to be the man, and so it seems like that he's gotten some good, and there's some younger corners now behind him. So it seems like he's gotten some good guys in there that could bring some respectability back to the position. Now you got to just hopefully these guys can coach them, and I am probably the biggest thing I am nervous about is the recruiting. But I hope that, they kind of get the defense just kind of back to where the Ohio State defense needs to be. And then maybe the on-field stuff speaks for itself and, makes it a little easier. And, maybe, they want to be, they get the talent already. And it's like now it's putting the guys in the correct positions and then letting them do what they, their God-given talent. But, they have brains too. And sometimes I've thought it seems like every time over the last several years, whenever anything would get kind of difficult, they would quickly just revert back to, well, we need to simplify it. And probably in hindsight, maybe they needed to kind of push through if you already had a kind of a crappy defense, maybe you just needed to push through with the difficulty and kind of let them grow, some of their minds. And I don't think they ever let them do that. So it's time, you got to let Knowles do that this time around and let him, even if there's some growing pains early next year. And I'm hoping that there won't be, but there probably will be some. And so, let him coach through it. And, they'll only be better by the end of the year. And then hopefully going forward, if they're forced to actually learn what they need to do. Last points for tonight, probably, even though I don't think any of these are technically officially, even though it seems like maybe all of them might have already been, their names might already be on the, on the staff directory. But they also brought in 3, off the field type coaches, 2 quality guys and an analyst, all from Oklahoma State, all from on the defensive side of the ball. So Brent Debisky or I can't even attempt to.
I'm saying Zebsky. I'm sure it's like Zebsky, but yeah, he's an analyst. He was at Oklahoma State last year. I think the 3 years prior to that, he worked at Wisconsin on defense, which, I've always been very high on Jim Leonard's defense. So I think that's awesome. You've had a guy that learned under him, and he's familiar with Knowles for that 1 year. He's coming over, even as an analyst, he can definitely help be a voice to one of those position coaches, kind of let them, terminology, what they're teaching, and help with that position group. So yeah,
Michael Hunter is one of the quality control guys, and then the one that everybody's really seems like really excited for, because he was starting to get really high praise. He actually coached the linebackers in the bowl game. Is it's Coy McFarland, right?
Yeah, Coy.
So another quality control guy there. Possibly maybe a future coach on that staff. If they decide that if Knowles in a year or two decides that he wants to just be defensive coordinator, and maybe Coy gets a promotion or something like that. So that could always be a possibility. But I like these hires because, like you were just saying with Brent, but they all now have familiarity with this defense. So it's kind of like, you can kind of spread this wealth out. It's kind of like helping these new coaches get on board, like up to date, help Larry get up to date on stuff. So maybe come spring, when they actually get on the field, maybe they all have a basis understanding. So it's a lot easier to start teaching this. Plus they can teach as coaches, that maybe then it kind of maybe takes out a step, that it's maybe easier to start getting transitioned into the defense. Any little thing that they can get down in spring before they get to fall practice is a bonus, because that's something that they don't have to learn getting ready for Notre Dame. Notre Dame is no picnic game to open up the year against. So it's as much as they can get of the fundamental parts of these defenses down by through spring, the better they are going forward.
Sure. And yeah, I mean, it's very smart. You start with almost a clean slate as defensive coaches, but you bring in these guys that can help you with these defensive coaches. So it wasn't just like Knowles was just hiring all his buddies to be his defensive coaches, but he got his guys over there. They're going to help everyone get up to speed. So, I mean, this is just a smart move. Like you said, that's going to just streamline the process, help everyone get the terminology, help everyone get the scheme down much quicker. Hopefully then, you're in a decent position next year, because it's going to take some time, especially with all these new coaches, and they're all learning something. So you're not going to see the 85 Bears next year. I'll tell you that right now, but hopefully you see some sort of competent defense that plays with, aggression, confidence, speed, and just knows where they're supposed to be. I think you will. I think, home run hires for the team altogether, but definitely I think the most underrated part of this is those 3 guys coming over from Stillwater that are going to help out.
Yeah.
Very impressed before, we start wrapping things up with, Ryan Day. There was a knack on him that he either only hired coaches that, were already on staff that he worked with, or guys that he had to bring in were just buddies that, he had familiarity with. Knowles obviously broke that mold. And then, he got rid of Coombs, got rid of Stud, got rid of Al. Al's his buddy, all the way back from Boston College. And he brings in, has Knowles and him hire people that they have not worked with. So the people that they feel is best for the job that are going to be able to learn this. Of course, Justin Frye is, Ryan Day's friend. They've known each other, but, maybe he has all the confidence in the role with him. And I mean, it seems like a great hire at this point.
And Ryan, and like you were said earlier, Frye has been around some guys that have, both Urban Meyer and Chip Kelly are known for their run schemes, and so those are.
Dazio is a great offensive line.
Dazio is a great offensive line coach, and and Chip over the last couple of years has actually changed up his run scheme. He's become even more of a power run team than he kind of was then. But if you think about it, back in the times of the Oregon, they were a finesse team, but they still had LeGarrette Blount and stuff like that. They still had guys that could play power football. Right. So, I mean, he was never afraid of playing power football when he needed to. And, it was just out of different formations. And,
Well, if you look back, I mean, they pushed around Ed Orgeron's LSU defensive line this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, and that's heart of SEC West country, man. That's what they're.
Regardless of what their final record was, I mean, they have good talent LSU. So, I mean, they so that wasn't like, UCLA was expected to win that game or anything like that. And, they pushed them around and they were tough. So, no, I like everything too. And I definitely like the hires of these quality control and the analysts. I mean, I think that kind of at the end of the day kind of gets me really excited just because, if you kind of think about it, I mean, I know Knowles wasn't coaching the game, but if you would say who's kind of up right now, who's got the advantage going into that opening season game, it's Notre Dame right now, just because he has seen that defense. So, I mean, he's actually going to be a little bit more prepared than, we're going to be prepared going into that game just because he has, I mean, it was the same defense that Knowles ran. It might not be exactly how Knowles would have ran it, but I mean, it was still a formidable defense because it shut them down in the second half. So, Marcus Freeman and that offensive staff they're going to have some ideas of how to attack us. So the quicker that we can get our players on board with some stuff, the better they're going to be because, that is a true thing that, Notre Dame, I think, will be a little bit more prepared to play that game than, at least to go against our defense, then, we think that a lot of people think they will be, because they'll have stuff actually on film.
Yeah. I mean, the Buckeyes, ultimately, what they got to be able to do is they got to be in a position that their best players on defense have to be the guys that they trust the most also. We cannot be in a position where we don't have our best players out there because they're the, least bit of a liability on defense. So that's what, I mean, those are the guys you got to get up to speed because we've seen that a lot over the years where someone else is starting in front of someone that's more athletic than them because that person understands, the defense better, or they're not a liability and the defensive staff can trust them. I need your best players to be the ones that can be trusted.
Yeah. Well, I think, we're going to wrap up here. So I think we're going to, I really want to kind of, I've been reading a lot about Knowles over the last couple of weeks. I think we'll probably over the next week or two, maybe, sometime in the next couple of weeks, I think I'd like to do a kind of a Jim Knowles show just to kind of break down some of the different things I think we're going to see just talking about it. I mean, we're not going to necessarily show anything, but just, I mean, it's pretty interesting, some of the stuff that he does. And, I mean, just like in how easily they got off the field this year on third downs. I mean, that right there helps Ohio State. I mean, forget sacks, forget, interceptions and all that stuff. If you can just force more 3 and outs than they've been forcing over the last 2 years, with the offense you have, I mean, that starts putting teams in a lot of holes.
Oh, and, so getting the ball back. That's the biggest thing for Ryan Day right now is get the ball back in his offense's hands.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see where it's going. I think we'll call it a night on that one. Just wanted to give everybody our reactions. Like you said, I definitely think it was, at least on paper, today was a good day. Now we see how that translates to both recruiting and to coaching, because in college football, both aspects are important. And, Ohio State can't take a drop off in either place right now, because, they got to get this defense back up to, the defenses of old. And when I say the defenses of old, you don't even have to go back to the Tressel errors or, those that's mid 90s stretch with Cooper. I mean, 2014, 2015, and 2016 were some very, very good defenses. And, when Fickle was the coach there, I mean, 2013 was kind of an off year, but 2012 was a pretty good defense too. And so, I mean,
right,
get us back to the spots that we've had good defenses on the field. And, it just kind of seems like 2019 has been that, just the oddball. It's the exception to the rule, and the rule was not a good rule. So it's been a long time since we've had just a really consistent, stout defense over several years, and I just want to get to that point.
Honestly, and I know you didn't watch the game. I think at the end of the day, I mean, pun intended. I think Ryan, he knows what his offense could do, but I think he saw what Alabama and Georgia looked like in that national title game. And he was just like, I can create a monster, with the players I have on my team. If I can have a defense, anything close to one of these two, I can have just a monster team and win titles. And
yeah, if he puts a comparable defense out there with them, I mean, if he can get a consistent top 5 defense, he offensively, he's got the players that can score on both those teams. And so it's, it's just, defensively, they're just too much of a liability out there. And, I think he saw that, and he definitely saw it against Michigan, that he saw a lot of things he didn't like, and, drastic changes needed to happen in his opinion. And they are, I mean, so,
And I think that kind of forced his hand this past Monday, that national title game, that he wasn't giving those guys a chance to, change their mind or make a different decision. He realized at that point, I think, that we just need an overhaul of the defense. I mean, and again, I know you didn't watch the game. Georgia, I mean, they just freaking flew to the ball. Every position group. It was something. It was just, I was so envious of their defense. Both of them. Alabama had a hell of a game on defense too. Just, they lost JMO in the first half, and it was just like, eventually, it was just too much weight and it broke their offense. But yeah, I mean, it was just like watching those two defenses just fly around, know where they're supposed to be, just make hits. I was like, my God, this used to be our defense.
Yeah. No, yep, definitely agree. And yeah, that probably had a lot to do with it. I'm sure, Ryan Day saw that, and, it's okay to figure some stuff out. And I think like I said, we'll do an old show. I'm pretty stoked at some of the stuff I'm seeing. Just let Ryan Day can't freak out. Just let him coach it. And,
let him do his thing. It'll
end up they'll end up learning it, and they're only going to be better for it. So, absolutely. All right, well, let's get on out of there with that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for stopping in tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OHIO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added, and please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OHIO.